2025 is halfway done and you may be feeling stuck and stagnant in your business. If that's the case, there's still a few things that you can do to pivot and still make this year out to be your best in business yet. I've actually found myself in the same boat, which is what inspired me to sit down and record this for you. Because even though my business isn't where I want it to be for 2025 and beyond, I realized something so important. I'm always in control of my business. You are always in control of your business. So that means no matter what point, whether it's January 2nd or December 31st, or a date in between, you're always able to turn things around and make different decisions. It requires you to step into your leadership as a business owner and to make some necessary adjustments in your business. So in this episode, I'm going to be breaking down what my process looks like and what the steps are to actually pivot your business so that you can have the most successful year in your business yet. I've been thinking about this for a while, especially in the context of being a business astrologer and strategist for business owners. And to be completely honest, I'm not where I want to be in my business. I am not at the space that I want to be in, and I'm not okay with just coasting along. But at the same time, I realize that the changes that I want to make are completely within my control. And when I sat down to think about what needed to change in order to see the success that I want to see in my business, it really came down to 4 core things. So no matter when you're listening to this, whether it's the time of recording or sometime in the future, I want you to take note of this. If you're also feeling stuck and stagnant in your business, if it feels like nothing you're doing is working, and if you so desperately want to see success in your business, but you just don't know how, these are the steps that you can follow in order to make that happen. The very first thing that I want you to do, even before we get into the 4 steps, is to realize that you have to be in a regulated space before you can make any of these changes. So much of what I was struggling with in business really came down to being over emotional. And I needed to have space in my business to have my emotions, but to do it outside of being in a decision-making space. So if you're feeling like you're very much in like a fight or flight mode, or your emotions are just like super heightened to the point where everything feels like the sky is falling, then you need to ground yourself first. That may mean stepping away from your business for a period of time. That may mean taking on a part-time job or Uber Eats or doing some sort of revenue generating activity outside of your business in order to have the spaciousness to be able to come back to it. And there's absolutely no shame in that. To be completely honest, that is the state that I found myself in for the last few years. I've talked about running my business with a day job, and it's definitely something that I've needed, especially healing from the massive business burnout that I experienced in 2021. So before even getting into any of these steps in order to pivot your business, you have to realize that you need to be in a regulated place for any of this to work. So if that requires you to take a break from your business, to step away, to do the things that you need to do in order to emotionally regulate and to be able to look objectively at those things, then do it. It is going to be so beneficial for you in the long term. Now, once you are in that space to be able to make these decisions about the adjustment of your business, you first want to assess where you are currently in business. What are the things that are going on in your business? What has worked over a period of time and what hasn't worked? What are the things that you're currently doing in your business, and where are the roadblocks happening? Being able to make an assessment helps to create a full picture of what is currently happening and where you may want to focus these 4 points on. So the first place that you want to dive into when it comes to making a pivot in your business is your identity. This is a big one. And again, this is why it's so important for you to be in a regulated place before you can make any necessary adjustments within your business. Your identity really runs the show, and without having a solid identity of who you are as a business owner, it really is going to make everything else that you're trying to do so much harder. Now, for me, this was actually where my biggest roadblocks were happening, because I realized that I actually haven't been positioning myself as a business owner, which seems really counterintuitive. But the reality is, I've actually been positioning myself as an educator. And let me explain. As a business astrologer, a lot of what people understand this job to be really revolve around, oh, you give birth chart readings, which is definitely how a lot of people operate within the astrology space. They position themselves as educators of astrology in showcasing not just here's what your birth chart actually looks like, here's what's included in it, and spend their time and their resources to breaking down what the placements and the planets and the signs actually mean, and literally tell people how to interpret their birth chart. And there's a lot of people that do really fantastic work with that. However, I've noticed this for a while that that is not the space that I want to be in. My true work really revolves around being a business owner, and more specifically being a business consultant for other online service-based business owners, other coaches, consultants, and service providers, and really consulting with them on how to integrate their birth chart into their business strategy so that they have personalized guidance on how to start, grow, and scale their online business. Instead of leaning into that, I have been relying too heavily on the astrologer aspect of my identity, on educating people on what astrology is and here's what this placement is. And in reality, that is so not what I want my work to be. So I had to take responsibility in the fact that, yes, that's how I've been leading myself up until this point. And that is why there's been this big discrepancy between feeling like I'm not attracting people in my audience that are, one, my ideal client, and two, really need and are ready for the services that I have. It's because I haven't been showing up with this identity of being a business owner, of being a business consultant who uses astrology in their work. Instead, I've been showing up as a business astrologer who just happens to know business stuff. So the biggest change with that is shifting how I am showing up in the space. It really isn't a change that requires this long drawn out process. In fact, as soon as I recognize that this is where the discrepancy was happening, I immediately changed how I was showing up. I made a decision that I'm no longer showing up in a place of educating people on what astrology is, and instead I'm showing up to support what the focus of my business is as a business owner. Recognizing this, that up until this point, I've been falling into the trap of being an educator rather than a business owner is so common, and it's probably what you're experiencing as well. If you're also in a space where you feel like your business just isn't working, the online business space in general is changing so much. There's so many tools and resources that people can look to in order to really support them in learning more information on understanding what something is or how to do something, the very technical aspects of what is required to follow a process. So they don't necessarily need personalized guidance, and they certainly don't need to hire you as an online service provider to support them in doing that. They can go to YouTube, they can go to Google, they can go to ChatGPT to figure out what those things are. So in order for your business to remain successful moving forward, it requires you to get really clear on what your identity actually is. If you are a business owner, you need to make the decision in this very moment to show up as a business owner rather than an educator, a creator, or an influencer. You are first and foremost and primarily a business owner. Making that shift within your identity makes everything else so clear. Now, the second thing to consider when it comes to making a pivot in your business are what your priorities are. So once you understand what your identity is, then you want to consider, okay, what is the priority of a business owner? So for me, this really looks like, what does the priority need to be within my business? And what I found is that it comes down to sales. In order to be a successful business owner, I have to prioritize selling because sales are really the lifeblood for the business. Prioritizing selling requires you to let go of other things that you thought were important. So, as an educator, or an influencer, or a content creator, your priority is to amass a following, right? You want to get people to subscribe to you or follow you on these specific platforms. So that requires you to create easily digestible content, to make content that is leaning into education and how-tos, or that is on the other side of the spectrum, and that is entertaining, right? And very fluffy and surface level, but doesn't necessarily drive them to commit to you beyond the platform or even to subscribe to you beyond that. So many business owners fall into this trap of getting their priorities mixed up because they're putting their priority on going viral, on amassing popularity. In reality, to be a successful business owner, you don't need any of those things. You don't need to go viral. You don't need to amass a large following. You can have a very successful business having a relatively small audience on social media because the amount of followers that you have or the number of eyeballs that you have on your content do not equate the revenue that you're able to generate within your business. Making your priority to sell instantly shifts the game. Knowing what your focus is and what your priority is as a business owner based on your identity really helps to put everything else into perspective. It releases so much pressure. I don't feel like I am stuck with how I need to show up on the platforms that I'm choosing to show up on, or that I don't know what to say or any of that. Instead, I'm really focused on, okay, if I'm going to sell, what am I selling? Who am I selling to? And what are the things that people need to hear from me to understand how my offer is going to best help them in order to convert? That's my priority. That's really it. So everything else becomes like extra instead of being a requirement. So this means that I don't need to show up on every single platform. I don't need to make a post every single day, and I don't need to be obsessive about seeing the view count or seeing who's liking or who's subscribing or any of that, because those are all just vanity metrics. Now my focus is put on conversion because conversion is what leads to selling. So making that shift and understanding what my priority is based on my identity, it really changes the game and helps you understand what is actually required in your business versus what's a nice to have. Once you know what your identity and your main priority is, then this helps to shape your signature offer. So for me, I have been flip-flopping between so many different offers because my priority really hasn't been with selling. And so there really has been this feeling of urgency of let me just sell something versus quantifying that with quality leads and the offer that is actually the best fit for my expertise. So understanding that my work is really about being a strategy consultant for business owners that uses astrology, right? That's my identity, and my priority is to sell, then that means that the thing that I am best suited to sell is my signature offer, because this is where I'm going to be able to best support my client in this process and really have the container to hold and walk them through what that process actually is. So this really looked at making a decision, okay, of letting go of all my offers. And this is actually something that I want to mention with all of these steps of what's required to pivot your business. It is a humbling experience, which is why you need to be regulated before you even start this process. Letting go of vanity metrics, knowing that your follower count is probably going to go down, that people are going to unsubscribe from you, from your social media platforms, your email list. People are going to be much more private about their support for you or showing you that they're interested in what it is that you're doing. That can really cause a big ego shift to happen. It makes you feel like, oh my gosh, nobody's watching, nobody's liking, nobody's subscribing to my stuff. What is going on? But knowing that you're not a content creator or an influencer, you're a business owner. And as a business owner, your priority is to sell. That helps to relieve that ego because your focus is on what actually converts. So when it comes to your signature offer, it's much more about how can I fill this offer with as many ideal clients as possible? And then how can I deliver and make this a really fantastic experience? That is what is actually going to lead to success for you in your business. I had to really get clear on letting go of all the other offers and really understanding what my signature offer is. And for me, that is my private astrologer program. This is a one-to-one consulting program that I offer to help other online service providers bring astrology into their business strategy. This is where I not only deep dive into what your chart is, but actually help you to customize a business strategy that helps you with your offers, your marketing, and your selling strategy in alignment with what actually is going on within your birth chart. What actually works with the signature offer is that I'm able to do all the things that I do best, bring in both that modern business strategy alongside the traditional Hellenistic astrology that I'm well versed in, and bring that together, and also do it in a way that answers all the other questions that people often have when it comes to me sharing my work and sharing that I'm an astrologer. What does this placement mean for me? Or how can I use this in my business? Or what does this actually look like? How can I make money with my business? It really doesn't scratch the surface to answer those questions in a business reading, but it does serve my clients to address that in a long-term one-on-one container, and that's why I'm prioritizing it as my signature offer. I am much more interested in having my offer be filled with my ideal clients than working with clients that are not quite where they need to be in order to make the most out of the offer, and then also to really appreciate the work that's being done. In order for my signature offer to work, you need to be at a certain level and to be prepared for that. And if you're not prepared for that, that actually leads into the next step, which is your content. But understanding that puts relief off of my shoulders, because now I don't need my offer to appeal to everybody. I have no interest in that. Instead, how can I make sure that this is reaching the people that it needs to reach? So for you, you want to consider what's the main way that you're going to be working with clients, what's actually required for you to convert those clients into your offer, and then also be able to deliver on a fantastic experience once folks are inside that offer. And then finally, we have content, which is the last place to look to when it comes to pivoting your business. So content plays a really huge role, and I listed it last because in the scale of understanding where your focus needs to be for your business, content really is like the last thing. And a lot of questions that come with understanding what content to post and how to do your content, it really is answered once you move through the other 3 steps. I think that free content needs to happen. We're in a time with the online business space where folks need to experience what it's like to work with you before they sign up to work with you. Free content definitely plays a really important role in your online business, but I think the way that we're approaching it needs to shift. So when you're an influencer or content creator, the role that your free content is playing is getting people to subscribe, to follow you, to just be part of your online community on that particular platform, but not necessarily to go a step beyond that, to subscribe to your email list, to actually work with you inside of your offers if you have any offers. And that's where there is the biggest disconnect that folks are experiencing when they're having trouble moving their audience, or their audience isn't converting because you haven't prioritized selling. You haven't positioned your identity to be a business owner. And so these are things that become extras, versus when you are a business owner and your priority is to sell, then conversion is the main action that your clients take. So the followers, the subscribing, the watching of your content, all of that becomes secondary. So with that, you need to understand that the role that your free content plays when you're a business owner is to shift your clients' thinking. So your free content isn't there to entertain them or even to educate them on what something is. The primary objective of your free content is to show them the shifts that are going to happen by working with you. This episode is actually a really good example of this, because I could have definitely gone the route of explaining this is how I use my Taurus midheaven to build my business, which is a content piece that I have done previously. However, when I make content that is specific about my frameworks, my methodology, my processes, that's actually what leads to conversion. A really recent example of this is I had an episode where I broke down the process that I use with my clients inside of Private Astrologer and what that actually looks like. That episode, it is definitely not one of my top listened to episodes, and even on YouTube, it doesn't even have 100 views. But I've been able to make 4 figures from that piece of content. Why? Because I'm prioritizing my process rather than making it something that is positioned to go viral or to amass a huge viewership. That's really the biggest difference. You don't need your content just to show people how to do something. In fact, I would even argue that free content, that how-to content, really isn't as valuable as it once was. And instead, the content that you need to be prioritizing as a business owner needs to be focused on shifting your clients' thinking. What are the things that they need to hear in order to really understand how your signature offer works for them? What are pieces of your process that you can explain to help contextualize why your work is so valuable and why your clients need to have it? Those are the kind of things that you can make your free content about. Once you have that, then it really makes sense to prioritize where you're going to be putting your focus. So for me, I do best when I'm able to showcase the entirety of this process, this methodology, my frame of thinking in long form content, which is why I always prioritize that, and the short form content is really secondary. But for me, the platforms that really prioritize this and also support leading to conversion are YouTube and the podcast, which is why I'm continuing to make YouTube videos and podcast episodes. If you're going to be consuming my free content, those are the places where you're going to find it. And then everything else, I'm making not as big of a priority. I'm currently playing around with Instagram. I think that it is helpful to have a short form platform where folks can connect to you. And I just find that between Instagram and TikTok, Instagram is more of a supportive place for conversions to happen. So that's really where I'm going to be prioritizing my focus. But again, short form content is so secondary within my business that even there, my short form content really comes after the long form YouTube video and podcast episode is created, because these are the places that are best supported for me to create converting content that helps to shift your thinking. Pivoting your business is not a complicated process. In fact, anything, including creating a successful business, is not a complicated process once you know what it is that you need to do. I really hope that this episode was helpful for you. And if you want to go deeper with bringing astrology into your business strategy so that you can grow and scale your online business as a coach, consultant, or service provider, then I want to invite you to work with me inside of Private Astrologer. Private Astrologer is my one-on-one consulting program where I work with online service providers to help them bring astrology into their business strategy to create a customized offer, marketing, and selling strategy that works for them and helps them to grow and scale with ease. The link to book your sales call for Private Astrologer can be found in the description show notes below, so definitely make sure that you check that out. And I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Bye.